and with the predominance of loud outcries, threats and tensions, and at a time when the big powers are unable to solve present problems, when mistrust in regional and international arenas is on the rise, when the psychological security of societies is being targeted by an onslaught of political and propaganda designs, and disappointment prevails over efficacy of policies and actions of the international organizations in the establishment of a durable peace and security, and the protection of human rights is being weakened, I plan to touch upon and explain the roots of and the ways out of these predicaments and some of the principal challenges facing our world. I will also speak to you about the need for remedying the present situation, prospects for a brighter and more hopeful future, and about the appearance of the sublime and beauty, compassion, and generosity, justice, and blossoming of all the God-given human talents, and the prominence of faith in God and realization of the promise of God. I will then submit to your judgment the nuclear issue of Iran as a reality and testing ground for the measurement of honesty, efficacy, steadfastness, and accomplishment. In the closing part of my statement, I will offer my proposals. Dear friends and colleagues, as you are all aware, mankind is currently facing important, numerous, and diverse challenges, and I will refer to some of them. 1. Organized attempts to destroy the institution of family and to weaken the status of women. Family is the most sacred and valuable human institution that serves as the center of the purest mutual love and affection amongst mothers, fathers, and children, and as a safe environment for the nurturing of human generations, and a fertile ground for the blossoming of talents and compassion. This institution has always been respected by all peoples, religions, and cultures. Today, we are witnessing an organized invasion by the enemies of humanity and plunderers to destroy this noble institution that is targeted by promoting lewdness, violence, and by breaking the boundaries of chastity and decency. The precious existence of women as the manifestation of divine beauty and as the peak of kindness, affection, and purity has been the target of heavy exploitation in recent decades by the holders of power and the owners of media and wealth. In some societies, this beloved human has been reduced to a mere instrument of publicity, and all the boundaries and protective shields of chastity, purity, and beauty have been trampled. This is a colossal betrayal of human society, of succeeding generations, and an irreparable blow to the pillar of social coherence, the family. 2. Widespread violations of human rights, terrorism, and occupation. Unfortunately, human rights are being extensively violated by certain powers, especially by those who pretend to be their exclusive advocates. Setting up secret prisons, abducting persons, trials and secret punishments without any regard to due process, extensive
We now leave the UN General Assembly to return you to the Senate. We plan to bring you the speech by the Iranian president in its entirety later in our program schedule. Lawmakers are returning now after the portrait unveiling ceremony for West Virginia Democrat Robert Byrd that took place in the old Senate chamber just off the Senate floor. The Senate has been debating the defense programs bill and amendments. Live coverage continues on C-SPAN 2.
Senator from Michigan.
President, I'd ask unanimous consent that further proceedings under the quorum clause be dispensed with.
Without objection.
I'd ask that we recess to the call of the chair.
Without objection. The Senate stands recessed to the call of the chair.
So, as you just heard, the Senate standing in recess, subject to the call of the chair. So we'll take that opportunity to go back to New York City and live coverage from the UN General Assembly, where the Iranian president is continuing his speech.
Are protected and praised, while the innocent Palestinians are subjected to political, military, and propaganda onslaughts. The people of Palestine are deprived of water, electricity, and medicine for the sin of asking for freedom. And the government that was freely elected by the people is targeted. Terrorists are being organized to attack the lives and property of the people with the blessings of the politicians and military officials of the big powers. The brutal Zionists carry out targeted assassinations of Palestinians in their homes and cities. And terrorists are decorated with medals of peace and receive support from the big powers. On the other hand, they gather a number of Jews from different parts of the world through false propaganda and with the promise of providing them with welfare, jobs, and food, and settle them in the occupied territories, exposing them to the harshest restrictions, psychological pressures, and constant threats. They prevent these people from returning to their homelands, and by coercion and propaganda, induce them to malevolence toward the indigenous Palestinian people. Iraq was occupied under the pretext of overthrowing a dictator and the existence of weapons of mass destruction. The Iraqi dictator, who had been supported by the same occupiers, was disposed of, and no weapons of mass destruction were discovered. But the occupation continues under different excuses. No day passes without people being killed, wounded, or displaced. And the occupiers not only refuse to be accountable and ashamed of their adventure, but speak in a report of a new market for their armaments as a result of their military adventure. They even oppose the Constitution, the National Assembly, and the government established by the vote of the people, while they do not even have the courage to declare their defeat and exit Iraq. Unfortunately, we are witnessing the bitter truth that some powers do not value any nation or human beings, and the only things that matter to them are themselves, their political parties, and their groups. In their view, human rights are tantamount to profits for their companies and their friends. The rights and dignity of the American people are also being sacrificed for the selfish desires of those holding power. 3. Aggressions against indigenous cultures and national values. Culture is the manifestation of identity and the key to the survival of nations and the foundation for their interaction with others. In an organized movement, indigenous cultures that are messengers of monotheism, love, and fraternity are being subjected to broad and destructive aggressions. National customs and values are humiliated, and the self-esteem and character of nations are ridiculed and defamed. The purpose is to promote blind emulations, consumerism, skepticism toward God and human values, and the plundering of the people's wealth by big powers.
Once again, we'll leave the UN General Assembly as the U.S. Senate is returning to a period of morning business. A time for general speeches. Max Baucus has the floor. Live coverage on C-SPAN 2.
program has been as close to that ideal as a major piece of legislation can be. It began 10 years